I am Joe Miyake, and today on Diving In Too Deep, we are talking with Joe Trey, the travel writer and small business owner. So Joe, we'll just start off the bat with your travel writing. When did you decide to even do that?
Officially, when it went from something that was more than just fun, right around 2008, I had submitted some articles to a magazine called Roadrunner to see if they'd be interested in the photos I was taking and the way that I wrote.
I remember it took some time for them to notice you. How much time was that?
Yeah, I think I submitted my first article to them probably about 6 to 8 months before, so I just figured it was something that just went into the vault. They were like, thank you for submitting, and it just went away. And then I got a nice text out of the blue about 6 to 8 months later saying that my first article had been picked up.
It had been picked up online or picked up for the print version?
I was actually picked up for publication, so it was the first time. I'd already had a blog, my adventurehermit.com blog, but this was the first time I was actually going to get to see something it's actually an international publication.
What was your plan when you first wrote that?
Sure. The way I'd heard about it, they were actually looking for some content to go into the print magazine. And I had been such a big fan of the print magazine for years. I was hoping to just get like maybe a photo and a little, maybe a paragraph type of thing in print. Just something that was more than the web. Obviously, the internet's where everything is now, but I still think there's just something super exciting about being able to hold it in your hand. So my goal was really to get in that print magazine and walk in an airport and be able to say, yeah, I'm in there.
Did you try to do anything fancy with that print version? Did you try and really tug at heartstrings or go over the top, or did you just try to write and stick to a true story and just be genuine in your writing? What was your...
It was easy for me to be genuine. It was a ride I did with my dad. A lot of the rides I was doing back then were my father and I, and so a lot of people, it turned out they resonated with that after the fact. I don't think that was my goal. My biggest goal was to not write a typical, we rode here, then we rode here, then we rode here. So much of travel writing is very kind of mile by mile, and I really wanted to kind of tell the story of my dad and I riding together. And then sharing the places we went versus it just being all about motorcycles. I guess I always try to write something that people who don't ride motorcycles would be interested in reading.
As a new writer, I'm always wondering, what's the next thing I have to do to make my writing better? What did you change in your writing to enjoy it more? When did you start to say, hey, I've got more of a story and this is actually something that I care to write and other people would care to read?
And you've heard me say this before when it comes to video projects. It came down to the editing. I had to get to that point, and I wish I could think of the title of the book. Stephen King wrote a great book about writing. And one of the things, two things specifically in there, he said, get rid of adverbs. So as soon as I did that, my writing got cleaned up and it made it easier to actually write to the content since you have to usually write to a number of words. So that was a big help. The other thing was just to keep writing. And I was constantly self-editing while I wrote, which is so much easier to do with word processors, which just made me sound really old. But obviously, if you're writing on a computer, you can constantly be tweaking and tweaking. And I had to get to the point and said, just write 8,000 words when you know it's going to be 1,500, and then go back and edit it. Then figure out where the story is. Just type and let the story kind of come out rather than trying to force it sentence by sentence. That was a big shift for me, and it's made the amount of writing I have to do now come a lot easier. But I probably spend 3/4 of my time editing, and I crank the first draft out. Actually, I was talking to my daughter yesterday. I had to do 2 pages, and it took me about 6 hours. And to be clear on that one, I had to put a lot of statistics in. So in 6 hours, I was verifying my own stats, making sure things matched up, finding the right images that were going to go with those articles. Even though it's a 1 page, you have 3 to 5 images in some cases that the editor wants, that they may narrow it down to 1 or 2 or 3.
Okay.
So I wasn't just writing the entire time in fairness there. But I've had days where I've sat for 6, 7, 8 hours just tweaking 1,800 words until I really felt like the story, you stripped everything away, and the story kind of comes out on the page.
One more question into sort of the technicalities of writing.
Yeah.
with that first 8,000 word draft, do you just go stream of consciousness and say, I don't care what this says, I'm just trying to get words and ideas out?
On a perfect day, yes. I mean, there's always that self-editor that's constantly popping back in and saying, oh, don't tell it that way. A lot of times I used to get hung up on how do I start it? How do I kick it off to get everybody's interest? And what I realize is don't write it, and then in the end I can usually go back through and be like, this is the part that's going to grab them, and I'll shift entire paragraphs around or take things out. So I don't try to make it a start to finish story on even the first, second, or third draft. I really let it just kind of come to me.
So you are a travel writer.
Yes.
Do you write at the end of every day?
Also, when I'm being disciplined, yes. I shoot constantly, though. I take a lot of audio notes, and it's pretty nice now, when you can actually take a photo and then quickly make an audio note or even a quick text note to yourself that will pair up with that photo. That's really saved me on multiple occasions. I've got assignments I've recently done that I actually did the ride 2 years ago, and I'm just putting it together now. And being able to go back and see all those photos and trigger my memory really allows me to spend the winters writing so that I can get back out and enjoy the summer again.
2 years seems like a long time, like a long gap between when you travel and when you actually write. Does it feel that way to you, or is that okay?
It can, especially in the publishing world. So I've got 2 articles coming out this summer that actually are from rides from 2013. I had to submit my drafts of everything in the summer of 2014. And then the entire thing from the publishing side gets put together in probably less than 3 weeks. So you go from taking forever to get anything happening, and then all of a sudden everything's got to be complete like ASAP inside of those three weeks.
Okay.
So it is a long gap. That's where the internet really can speed it up. These particular articles I'm doing for print, I had blogged about them for almost a year. It was a 2-month ride that I spent almost 50 weeks writing 1 week blogs about, and I was able to draw from a lot of that. But I do try to make the print story a different story than just a repeat of the blog.
For people that want to be travel writers, let's say they don't have anything in print yet, they don't even have a blog yet, what's your suggestion to them at that moment in their life?
Well, if they don't have a blog, then get one. I mean, they're free now. It's so much easier than it was, even 5 years ago. And if you don't have that, at least a Facebook page. Just be out there. Like you were asking, do I write every day? I think if you can get out there, not every day, but consistently. So if you say, well, I'm going to always publish on Thursdays, get a paragraph a week out on Thursdays. There's a lot of content in the world that overwhelms people. And you can work really hard and realize a lot of folks aren't reading anything you're doing, no matter how good it is. But if you can come up with a discipline and a consistency, it's at the very least, it's going to make your writing better. And then when the time comes to meet with a publisher or get somebody to be interested, now you're going to have a backlog of things that you've written, and now you can narrow it down and pull your best pieces and really look great. But it's a muscle. It's something you got to exercise, and I think a lot of people wait to write till they get the assignment. I definitely wrote and wrote and wrote, and a lot of times not even about travel things, just whatever was on my mind, just to get it out, and it forced me to kind of, I think, develop the style I have that doesn't make me necessarily like all the other travel writers that I write with.
As a travel writer, do you try to find adventure so that you have content, or do you take more of the I'll let anything happen to me and just write about that approach?
It's probably both. When it's motorcycle related, which is the majority of the writing that I do, my goal is always to take the longest, most difficult way to get to common locations. I went to Vegas not too long ago. Most people would just hop on I-70 and hammer out to Vegas. I did most of it off-road, so I was constantly searching out dirt roads and camping, and so it's a 900-mile trip. You can do it in 2 days if you want to just hop on and go. I did it in 4 or 5 days and experienced a whole bunch more, which then of course opens up just a whole lot more to talk about and write about, because it's not a lot to talk about just cruising on the highway. It's kind of boring. So I definitely try to find alternative routes as often as possible.
Is that Is that as easy as just looking at a map and saying, oh, hey, I'll eventually get to my destination if I go this way?
Yeah, you know, it can be. There's trips I've taken when I first started doing this. One of the tricks I used to do was I would just ride and ride and ride. I would just keep picking roads and get as lost as I possibly could. And a modern day GPS system, there's a button on there that has your home address. So I would just ride for 3 or 4 hours and then eventually hit the home button and let it figure out where I was and then get home that way. And so then I would have this whole mystery up front that hopefully something would happen on. And then if everything was working well, the GPS would find my way out and do that. So oftentimes I'll even go without maps just to not get jaded or fall into the trap of it. So it just depends.
What was your last biggest adventure,
The last one is I just did the Pacific Coast Highway in California.
and how long is that?
Well, the highway itself was I did the section from San Francisco up to what's called Cape Disappointment in Washington State. It's the furthest point west in the continental United States where you can actually pitch a tent and sleep. And so I wanted to do that. So I actually got to sleep right out on the Pacific Ocean. The entire trip was around 3,500 miles since I started here in Denver. Headed to Yosemite was sort of the first destination before heading to the California coast, and then just took my time going up through the redwoods and all of that before eventually doubling back and coming home.
Now, from Yosemite, as you're going to California, what was a memorable experience?
From Yosemite over, probably the best one, which I just finished writing about this actually, was I went to Alice's Restaurant, which was loosely based off of an old Arlo Guthrie song. So any aging hippies, or myself included, kind of grew up with this song. And even though the restaurant in the song and movie is actually in upstate New York, the one that everybody goes to is actually high above Silicon Valley. There in California. So actually getting to go there and eat there, they've got a lot of hamburgers named after motorcycles, so it's kind of perfect destination for a geek like me.
Was the food good?
It was fantastic. Yes.
And what kind of burger did you get?
I was on a BMW at the time, so I actually had to order the BMW burger just to stay consistent.
Yeah, stay true to your vehicle.
I did at the time, yes.
Do you have a relationship with your motorcycle?
I used to have a hard time like selling bikes or getting rid of them. There was a big emotional attachment. When I sort of started riding more for the destinations, or at least the places I was riding, versus the moment or the time, I guess, that I had on the bike. I try to think of a better way to explain this. When I was riding more street bikes, I would become very attached to my street bikes. I would put chrome on them. I would do all those things that would you almost felt like you were doting on it. When